One of the fake compliance officers bolted, thinking he could outrun a problem he didn't understand. But before he made it 10 feet past the barn, Tamika James, a former Marine, hit him like a freight train, slamming him into the dirt. Around them, real SWAT officers closed in, rifles raised, as the desert exploded with a precision no scam artist could have ever anticipated. The Arizona sun hung low over the horizon, casting a coppery glow across the rugged landscape just outside Flagstaff. The Barrett compound, 6 acres of dirt, scrub, and steel, sat like a fortress carved into the desert. It wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. For Logan Barrett, 44, this land was both sanctuary and staging ground. A former Rapid Response Unit instructor with 20 years under his belt, Logan now ran a private tactical training program for retired military, ex-law enforcement, and a handful of vetted civilians who were tired of being vulnerable. At that moment, he was leaning against the porch railing of his single-story ranch house, sipping lukewarm black coffee and watching a dozen trainees run close-quarters drills around a decommissioned school bus. The scent of gun oil, sweat, and Arizona dust hung thick in the air. Logan narrowed his eyes against the morning glare, clocking each trainee's form, stance, decision speed. He didn't believe in yelling. You either moved like your life depended on it, or you didn't belong here. His instructors, 2 retired Rangers and a no-nonsense Marine named Tamika James, handled the field work. He observed like a hawk, intervening only when something felt off. And this morning, something was about to feel very off. It started with the crunch of tires on gravel. Logan turned his head toward the long dirt driveway just in time to see 2 white SUVs rolling in. Not dusty work trucks, not UPS or FedEx, clean, polished, government-looking. Magnetic decals on the sides read Regional HOA Compliance Task Force. Logan's jaw tensed. There was no regional HOA in this part of Coconino County. Hell, there wasn't even a local one. These lots were unincorporated, and everybody around here liked it that way. 2 men stepped out. Both wore tactical-style vests with no official insignia, utility pants, and mirrored sunglasses that screamed wannabe. One of them, tall and wiry with a patchy beard and a clipboard tucked under his arm, turned to his shorter, bulkier partner and said loud enough for Logan to hear, "You check the perimeter. I'll talk to the owner." Logan stepped off the porch slowly, arms relaxed but purposeful. "Morning," he said flatly. "Can I help you?" The tall one flipped open the clipboard without offering a name. "We've received multiple complaints about unauthorized structural modifications and sound ordinance violations. We're here to conduct a compliance inspection." Logan didn't move. "You're with who again?" "Regional HOA Compliance Task Force. Authorized by state oversight." Logan smirked without smiling. "Funny. Because there isn't a regional HOA out here. And I'd know, seeing as I've owned this land for 15 years. The man's expression barely twitched. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. Interfering with a compliance officer can result in civil penalties." Logan's voice dropped an octave. "You're not a compliance officer. You're trespassing. And you've got 5 seconds to walk back to your SUV." The man took a step closer. "You really want to do this the hard way?" Logan didn't flinch. He raised his voice just enough for it to carry across the yard. "Tamika." From behind the bus, Tamika James emerged in full gear, rifle slung across her back, eyes sharp. She didn't say a word, just stood there watching. "Is this supposed to intimidate us?" the tall man barked. "Because I'll tell you right now, threatening enforcement officers is a serious offense." Logan held up a hand. "Let me make this clear. This is private property. Live tactical training is in progress. You've entered an active zone with 0 clearance, no warrant, and no identification. Leave. Now." Instead, the shorter man appeared from behind the second SUV, snapping photos with his phone. He'd gone around the side, past the warning signs, and was now standing within 20 feet of the equipment storage barn. Logan's nostrils flared. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed directly. "Yeah, this is Barrett. I've got 2 men impersonating officials on private property. They're interfering with a live drill. One just tried to access a weapons shed. Send deputies." Before the dispatcher could respond, shouting erupted near the drill zone. One of the intruders had gone over to a trainee's gear bag and began rifling through it like he owned the place. The response was immediate. The trainees, a mix of ex-cops, veterans, and private security contractors, formed a perimeter without being told. Tamika was already moving. "Drop the bag," she barked. The man turned and reached toward his belt. Not a badge. A taser. "Stand down," he ordered, eyes twitching. That's when Logan stepped forward. "Enough," he snapped. "You're endangering my people, trespassing, and obstructing a federal compliant training exercise." The man sneered. "You think we're scared of a washed-up has-been with a fake army in his backyard?" "You should be," Logan said quietly. And that's when it happened. From the tree line at the far end of the property, the sound of engines grew louder. 3 black SUVs, kicking up trails of dust, appeared in perfect formation. They weren't sheriff units. These were unmarked, but familiar, too familiar. They belonged to Logan's old rapid response crew. They'd been using the southern quadrant of the property for a surprise scenario. And now they were returning, armed, ready, and unamused. Within seconds, 8 heavily armored officers exited the vehicles like clockwork. Helmets, vests, M4S, Logan locked eyes with the lead, Derek Holt, his old second-in-command. They didn't need words. Holt simply gave him a nod. "You said red flag, Logan." "This it?" Logan pointed. "They claimed state authority, broke into my yard, pulled a taser on my team." Holt's face hardened. One hand signal, and his team moved, 2 flanking right, 2 left, 2 center, and 2 taking cover at the vehicles. "Hands where I can see them," one officer shouted. "Get on the ground," another barked. The tall man with the taser hesitated, his fake bravado now melting. His eyes darted from Logan's trainees to the incoming real operators. Then he bolted. Wrong move. Tamika was already in motion. Her boots dug into the dirt, and in less than 3 strides she tackled him clean off his feet, slamming him down with a thud that echoed off the barn wall. The taser flew from his hand, landing harmlessly in the sand. The other imposter went limp, dropping his phone and falling to his knees. "Wait! Wait! It's a misunderstanding. We were just doing our job. We didn't know this was." "Save it," Holt said, yanking his wrists behind his back. Logan walked over, crouching next to the man Tamika had just dropped. The guy's sunglasses were cracked, his vest scuffed with dust and panic. Logan's voice was low, but lethal. "You think you can just show up with a cheap vest, a clipboard, and an attitude and pretend you run this place? You think nobody out here knows the law? That we just roll over and hand you cash like scared retirees?" The man stuttered. "They said these lots were gray zones, that we had temporary enforcement rights." Logan's face turned to stone. "You forged state documents, pointed a weapon at civilians, and barged into a tactical drill. You're lucky you're not in a body bag." Behind him, Holt opened the back of one of the SUVs and pulled out a black case. Inside, stacks of fake HOA letters, payment slips, forged inspection forms. Another bag was stuffed with prepaid debit cards, most still sealed. Holt looked up grimly. These guys weren't just bluffing. They were organized. They've been hitting unincorporated zones, collecting thousands in compliance fees. "Logan, we've been hearing complaints for weeks. I think you just cracked it wide open." Logan didn't respond right away. He just stood there, watching the 2 cuffed men hauled into the back of the SWAT SUVs, their arrogance now buried under fear and dust. Around him, his trainees exhaled, weapons lowered, stance relaxing. "I can't believe they were that bold," Tamika muttered, brushing dirt from her sleeve. They weren't bold, Logan replied. They were desperate. And desperate men pretending to have power? Those are the ones you watch closest. He looked over his land, his home, his mission. He wasn't just training warriors anymore. He was building guardians. And this fight? It had just begun. The dust from the departing SWAT vehicles still hovered in the morning air like a ghost that hadn't decided whether to stay or flee. Logan Barrett stood at the edge of the training zone, boots planted in gravel, arms crossed, jaw tight. Around him, his trainees were slowly dispersing, some checking their gear, others still murmuring about what had just happened. Tamika James, wiping dust from her forearms, walked up beside him and stared down the driveway where the two fake enforcers had been hauled away in cuffs just minutes earlier. That was too damn close, she muttered. Logan didn't respond right away. His eyes were on the ground, but his mind was racing. Something didn't sit right. These weren't just con men on a bad day. They had a system, too polished, too confident. That clipboard wasn't some backyard print job. And that taser? It was real. Professional grade. Tamika nudged him. You thinking what I'm thinking? Logan gave a small nod. Yeah. They've done this before. And he was right. Less than an hour later, Lieutenant Derek Holt returned to the property, this time with 2 deputies and a forensic unit. Logan, now in a gray t-shirt and tactical pants, met them near the barn. Holt opened the back of one of the seized SUVs and motioned for Logan to look. Inside were 2 black duffel bags. The first contained laminated violation forms, HOA letterheads with different logos, a binder of printed maps, and even forged county zoning notices. Some were stamped. Others bore QR codes that linked to dummy websites. Jesus, Logan said under his breath. Holt wasn't done. The second bag held a mix of prepaid debit cards, receipts, and a burner phone with texts between someone labeled D.Boss and the fake inspector. Another one done, one message read. Got $1,200 off that retired couple in Mesa. Told them we'd contact CPS if they didn't comply. Logan's fist clenched. Holt looked at him sideways. This ain't just impersonation anymore. It's extortion. Organized. Logan asked for a copy of the material and Holt agreed. We've had complaints, scattered ones. Nobody could tie them together, until now. Logan felt the shift in his gut. This wasn't just a lucky break. It was a wake-up call. These guys were targeting people who didn't know the law, who didn't know their rights. And if they were bold enough to roll up on a tactical training compound mid-drill, how many quiet neighborhoods had they already hit? The next morning, Logan took action. He stood on the back porch of the main house with his laptop and drafted a flyer. The headline was bold, black, and impossible to miss. Know your rights, what to do when fake authority knocks. Below that, a subhead, Free Community Workshop, hosted by Logan Barrett, veteran instructor, Saturday 4 p.m. at Barrett Tactical Grounds. He printed a stack, hit up 3 local feed stores, 2 veteran centers, a diner, and the Flagstaff post office. Then he made a call to his old friend Natalie Pierce, a retired judge with a knack for translating legalese into plain English. I'm in, she said. And I'll bring sample paperwork and a projector. By Saturday, Logan had cleared the training yard and set up folding chairs beneath a canvas awning. He expected a few dozen. Maybe 50 if word got out. Instead, over 200 people showed up. Trucks, minivans, motorcycles, and dusty sedans lined the dirt road leading in. Folks brought lawn chairs, coolers, notebooks. An elderly woman in hiking boots held a clipboard of her own. A single mom with 2 kids sat front row, arms crossed, eyes wary. Everyone had the same look, tight, alert, somewhere between hope and suspicion. Logan didn't wear a uniform or carry a weapon that day. Just jeans, boots, and a long-sleeve Henley shirt. When he stepped up to the mic stand, he looked out at the crowd and let silence work for a moment. 3 days ago, he began, 2 men in fake vests showed up here claiming authority they didn't have. They came onto my land. They threatened my team. One of them pulled a taser. They're both in custody now." He paused. "But they've done it before. And if we don't act, they'll do it again." The crowd was dead silent. Then a voice near the front spoke up. "They came to me," said a man in a Vietnam veteran hat. "Told me I owed $600 for some roofing code. Said if I didn't pay, they'd fine me another $1,000. A woman 3 rows back raised her hand. "They said my son's toys were a safety violation. I was scared they'd call CPS. I paid them $800. I didn't tell anyone." Heads nodded. Shoulders sagged. Shame, fear, and fury hung in the air like smoke. Logan held up a thick stack of forged citations from the SUV. "This is what they use. Looks real. Sounds real. But it's a lie. And starting today, you'll learn how to tell the difference." Natalie Pierce walked up next with a slide presentation that showed exactly how to spot fake letterheads, how to verify official zoning claims, how to record and report unlawful visits, and most importantly, how to stand your ground legally. She ended with one firm reminder: if someone threatens you, you don't comply. You call. You document. You don't pay for peace, you fight for it. The workshop lasted 3 hours. There was no shouting, no panic. Just learning. Just resolve. By the end, Logan had a sign-up sheet for additional sessions. 50 names turned into 100 by the next morning. His quiet compound had become something else, a place people saw not as a shooting range, but a shield. The story picked up steam. Local papers ran headlines like "Veteran Trainer Shuts Down Fake HOA Scam" and "Citizens Fight Back with Knowledge." Channel 9 ran a Sunday feature that showed Logan walking his land, pointing to the exact spot where the fake enforcers had been tackled. Within days, deputies from nearby towns started calling. Not just for help, but to volunteer. 2 of them, brothers-in-law both recently retired, drove out to meet Logan in person. "We're done chasing speeders and filing paperwork," one said. "We want to help people before they get scammed. Before they get hurt." Logan didn't hesitate. "Then let's build something." Together, they began outlining what would become the Civil Defense Initiative, a grassroots program that offered tactical awareness and legal knowledge to civilians, with a special focus on rural communities, veterans, and seniors. The mission was simple: empower the people before someone takes advantage of them. And Logan wasn't stopping there. He updated his training curriculum. New modules now covered how to identify forged credentials, how to de-escalate interactions with pseudo-authorities, how to document threats properly, and how to protect personal property using lawful means. The next class filled in under 48 hours. A teenager enrolled alongside his mom. A widower brought his daughter. A nurse from Holbrook drove 2 hours. They weren't preparing for combat. They were preparing for life. Back at the sheriff's office, detectives working with Holt traced the burner phone recovered from the SUV. Texts, GPS pings, and transaction logs revealed multiple other compliance hits across Prescott, Mesa, and Queen Creek. Several more victims stepped forward, sharing eerily similar stories: unmarked SUVs, stern men with vests and clipboards, citations for mailbox tilts, garden hose violations, window tints. Most had paid. Some had handed over thousands. The sheriff's department linked it all to a loosely organized ring of ex-security guards, one disgraced paralegal, and a group of tech-savvy grifters who bought document templates off the dark web. And at the center of that ring? Troy Nason and Eli Garner. They'd been running their scam for nearly 2 years. But the moment they walked onto Logan Barrett's land, it all started to fall apart. And Logan? He wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because this wasn't about revenge or justice anymore. This was about prevention. About community. About the fight ahead. And as he watched families drive away from the workshop that night, flyers in hand and shoulders a little straighter, Logan understood something deeper. The battle wasn't at the gate anymore. It was on the front porch. And this time, the people weren't backing down. The sky over Flagstaff was pale and streaked with lavender as the sun dipped low behind the horizon, casting long shadows over the Barrett Tactical Grounds. The desert wind had picked up that evening, rustling through the tarps and folding chairs still scattered across the yard from the community workshop just hours earlier. Logan Barrett stood by the edge of the property, arms folded, watching the last of the trucks pull away. His boots were coated in dust, his shirt damp with sweat, but his mind was sharper than ever. He didn't feel relief, he felt momentum. What began as a trespass incident had cracked something much larger wide open, and Logan wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Inside his home office, stacks of printed violation letters and forged documents lay spread across a large table. Red ink circled every inconsistency, every false seal, every fake QR code. Natalie Pierce had stayed behind to help sort them, and now, beside her laptop, sat a list of names, dozens of them, gathered from texts, receipts, and incoming calls since the story broke. It was no longer just about what happened on Logan's land. This was bigger, and it was spreading. By Monday morning, Prescott PD contacted the sheriff's office with confirmation 5 residents had filed nearly identical complaints within the past 6 months. Mesa reported 3 more. Queen Creek sent over an incident report detailing an elderly couple who had paid nearly $3,500 to compliance officers for not trimming desert brush fast enough. Holt, the lieutenant who'd responded to Logan's call that first day, called him personally. "You were right," he said simply. "They've hit at least 20 homes across 4 counties. Most of them unincorporated, most victims elderly or single." Logan pressed his phone tighter against his ear. "You got the connections to push this statewide?" Holt exhaled. "Yeah. And now we've got faces, too." The fake enforcers were officially identified as Troy Nason and Eli Garner, both in their late 30s, both with records, nothing violent, but suspiciously tidy backgrounds in private security, property management, and 1 revoked notary license. The court unsealed evidence showing they'd purchased official-looking HOA templates online, created shell websites that mimicked county databases, and even used a network of burner phones to stagger operations and avoid detection. They didn't just knock on doors, they scouted neighborhoods, noted who was alone, who had military flags or MAGA bumper stickers, who might be hesitant to call the cops. They preyed on the cautious and law-abiding, knowing fear could do more than force, it could coerce. But Logan's case had shattered their strategy. With real operators, real evidence, and a very public takedown, the state had no choice but to act. Within 2 weeks, Nason and Garner were indicted on multiple charges: impersonating public officials, criminal trespassing, fraud, attempted extortion, possession of forged documents, and threats to public safety. And Logan? He wasn't just a witness, he was the anchor of the case. The courtroom was packed when Logan took the stand. Reporters from Phoenix, Tucson, and even an out-of-state outlet crowded into the gallery. He wore a simple button-down, no medals, no mention of his service. Just a man who refused to be bullied on his own soil. The prosecutor asked him to recount the events. Logan didn't embellish. He didn't need to. He laid out the facts: how the men arrived, what they claimed, how they escalated, and how they were neutralized. And then, just before stepping down, he paused and looked directly at the jury. "Let me be clear," he said. "This isn't about ego. This isn't about guns or uniforms or who's tougher. This is about truth. Because not every threat comes with a ski mask or a break-in. Some threats smile. Some carry clipboards. Some wear tactical vests they bought online and tell you they have authority when they don't. And if we don't start treating those threats like they matter, someone's going to get hurt. Or worse." The courtroom fell still. Even the judge leaned forward, listening. Logan glanced at the defense table where Troy Nason sat pale and tight-lipped, his once cocky grin wiped clean. "They chose the wrong house," Logan added. "But the scary part is, they could have picked a dozen others and walked away with cash, power, and no consequence. Not anymore." By the time the verdict came in, the ripple effects had already begun. The fraud ring unraveled fast. One of Nason's former associates, an ex-paralegal named Dennis Brewer, flipped for immunity and exposed a network of 5 more participants who were actively scamming in other counties. Arrests followed in Maricopa, Cochise, and Pinal. More fake citations were recovered, along with cash, prepaid cards, and logs detailing victim names, addresses, and psychological risk scores based on perceived fear, isolation, or resistance. But in Flagstaff, something else was happening. A movement was growing. Logan's training school transformed almost overnight. What was once a facility for advanced tactical work became a hybrid ground zero for citizen awareness. Classes filled weeks in advance. Logan and Natalie expanded their curriculum, offering rights and responsibilities seminars, real-world scenario training, and community outreach programs. Retirees brought their neighbors. Veterans brought their spouses. School teachers, nurses, grocery clerks, single dads, they all came. Not for combat. For clarity. To be able to look a stranger in the eye and say, "I know my rights. And I'm not afraid." The sheriff's department donated printing services for flyers. Local businesses put up posters. A local church even offered to host monthly events. "This isn't just your fight," the pastor told Logan. "This is all of ours now." The Barrett Tactical Grounds didn't look all that different from the outside. Same steel targets, same dust-covered fencing, same obstacle course in the back corner. But the people walking through it were no longer just ex-military or weekend enthusiasts. They were everyday Americans who'd had enough of being manipulated. A mother of 3 who once paid a stranger $900 for grass height violations now stood confidently at the registration table helping others sign in. A widowed retiree who'd nearly handed over his Social Security card to a fake inspector now led a small group workshop on documentation and phone recording techniques. They weren't training for war. They were training for life, and no clipboard bully was going to catch them off guard again. One evening, as the sun burned orange against the high desert sky, a reporter from Channel 5 asked Logan if he thought the problem was truly over. Logan adjusted his ball cap, glanced out at the yard where civilians practiced role-playing response drills, and gave a small, tired smile. "Scams evolve," he said. "Bad guys adapt. So we train smarter. And we stay ready." Then he turned and walked back toward the training barn, where a young couple was waiting beside an elderly woman in hiking boots and a teenage boy gripping a folded-up flyer in his hand. They weren't soldiers. Not yet. But they sure as hell weren't victims anymore. And that dusty 6-acre patch of land just outside Flagstaff? It wasn't just a training site. It had become something more. A place where lies unraveled, where fear turned into resolve, and where the illusion of authority met the reality of American grit. Logan hadn't asked for this fight, but now that it had come to his doorstep, he wasn't backing down. Not today. Not ever. In a world where the lines between real authority and fake intimidation are increasingly blurred, the story of Logan Barrett isn't just an action-packed account, it's a warning, a lesson, and a call to awareness. Logan didn't ask to become a symbol of resistance. He wasn't looking to start a movement. He was simply protecting his land, his people, and his principles. But when deception showed up at his gate, he didn't flinch. And neither should we. The biggest takeaway from Logan's experience is this: not every threat comes with a weapon, some come with a clipboard and a smile. We've grown so accustomed to trusting uniforms, titles, and official-sounding language that we forget the one tool no scammer can replicate: knowledge. Those fake compliance officers weren't just after money, they were after obedience. They relied on fear, confusion, and our instinct to avoid conflict. And too many people paid the price simply because they didn't know how to say no with confidence. So here's the advice I want to leave you with. Know your rights. Research your local laws, HOA regulations, if they apply, and who has real authority to access your property. Verify before you comply. Real officials carry verifiable credentials. If someone refuses to provide ID or pressures you to act immediately, it's a red flag. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Document everything. Video, audio, timestamped photos. Scammers hate evidence. Talk to your neighbors. Awareness spreads faster than fear. A strong, informed community is the best defense. And most importantly, don't let fear control your response. Fear is what these people prey on. But knowledge? That's how we fight back. To all our listeners here at U.S. Justice Story, thank you. Thank you for showing up, for listening, and for caring about stories that matter. This story, like many others we share, isn't just entertainment. It's a shield, armor for the everyday citizen who refuses to be silenced, scammed, or scared into submission. Whether you're a single parent, a senior citizen, a veteran, or just someone trying to live a quiet life, this channel is for you. We stand for truth, dignity, and the power of ordinary people to say not today. Until the next story, stay alert, stay strong, and never underestimate the strength of a calm voice backed by knowledge.